morning, students. Today's session is for steps in location selection. In my last class, I discussed what is a plant location and what are the factors that affect plant location. Means what are the factors really means the industrialist must have to consider while identifying a good location for their plant. Today I will discuss another topic of plant location, that is steps in location selection. So before starting today's session, I want to clear you what is the meaning of plant location. So first we have to understand what is a plant, what is a location. After that we can able to get a clear meaning about plant location. So first, what is a plant? Plant, we can say that it is an industrial unit where actual production takes place, or we can say that it is an industrial site where the manufacturer produces the goods, operates the machines, and converts one material into another material. And directly we can say that plant is a factory or building where actual production takes place, or where manufacturer converts various materials or various inputs into outputs. Next comes to location. Location, we can say that it is a place or an area. Next comes to plant location. Plant location, we can say that it is an identification of an area or location where the plant should be located. Hence, it is a process of making decision related to identification of an area where the plant should be operated, where the plant should be located, or where actual production takes place. The decision related to identification of an area is a very crucial decision. Every industrialist should have to identify a good location for their plant. If they identify a good location for their plant, then it brings operating maximum operating efficiency for the organization, and it helps to improve the productivity of the organization, and it helps to reduce the cost of production also. So every industrialist should have to identify a good location for their plant. If the industrialists are unable to find out a good location for their plant, then it brings huge loss to the organization. Means if the industrialists take faulty decisions relating to identification of location for their plant, then it leads to bankruptcy and insolvency of the farm. If the plant wants to, or if the industrialist wants to shift their plant from one place to another place, then it involves unnecessary cost, and it increases the cost of production, and sometimes that leads to insolvency and bankruptcy of the farm. So shifting of a plant from one place to another place is a costly affair. So every industrialist should have to take utmost care while selecting the location for their plant. Means they have to identify a good location for their plant initially, and they should not identify a place arbitrarily. They have to consider various factors. They have to perform various steps for identifying a good location, so that it helps them to maximizing their operating efficiency, and that helps to reducing the cost of production. So today I will discuss another topic of plant location, that is steps involved in location selection. So what we will discuss in steps in this topic? In this topic, we will discuss what steps and what procedures the entrepreneur should have to adopt for selecting a location for their plant. They have to identify a location by adopting different procedures, and by performing various activities in a step-by-step or systematic manner. And they have to proceed in a systematic way, so that they can able to identify a good or ideal location for their plant. So, what are the steps generally the entrepreneur has to follow for identifying a good location for their plant? Let me discuss. For selecting or for identifying a good location, generally there are four steps involved. The entrepreneur have to perform or have to follow four steps for identifying a good location. These are: first, within the country or outside of the country; selection of the region; selection of the locality; selection of the exact site. Means first the entrepreneur have to decide, or the industrialist have to decide where the plant should be located. Means the plant should be located whether in domestically or internationally. Means in first step the industrialist have to identify the country where the plant should be located, where the plant should be operated. After identifying the country where the plant plant should be located or operated, next logical step involved in location selection is selection of the region. This country having many natural regions. Out of that, the industrialist should have to identify a particular region for installing their plant. So, in selection of region step, what the industrialist will do? The industrialist identify a particular region for installing their plant. So, while identifying a particular region out of many natural regions, they have to consider various factors. By considering various factors, they can able to identify a good region for their plant. After identifying a particular region, next step involved in location selection is selection of locality. So, after identifying a particular region, they have to identify a particular local area. Because in a particular region, there are number of local areas, there are number of communities. Out of that, the industrialist should have to identify a proper local area for installing their plant. They have to identify a locality out of many areas of region for installing their plant. After identifying a locality, the industrialist must have to identify the exact site for installing their plant. So, in localities also there are number of industrial sites, and the industrialist must have to identify the exact site for installing their plant. So, these are the logical steps that involve in location selection, and the entrepreneur must have to follow these steps, must have to proceed in a systematic way, so that in a step by step way, so that they can able to identify a good location for their plant, and that helps them to maximize their operating efficiency, and that helps them to reduce the cost of production. If they're not able to identify a good location, then the farm sometimes leads to bankruptcy and insolvency. So to avoid these things, the entrepreneur must have to identify a good or proper location for their plant. So for identifying good or proper location for their plant, they have to proceed in a step-by-step manner. They have to proceed in a systematic manner, so that they can able to identify a good location for their plant. If they follow these steps, then they can able to identify a good location for their plant. And if they follow these steps, they move from broader perspective to narrow perspective. Means first they have to identify a country where the plant should be located. After identifying a country, they have to identify a particular region where the plant should be installed. After identifying the particular region, they have to identify a locality among various parts of the region. After identifying a particular locality, they have to identify the exact site for installing the plant. So if they follow these things, they can capable to identify a good location for their plant. So let me discuss all steps of plant location in a detailed manner. So first step involved in location selection is within the country or outside of the country. This is the first step involved in plant location. Means the industrialist or manufacturer or the entrepreneur should have to decide whether the plant should be located domestically or internationally. Means they have to make decisions related to installing the plant in their home country or at outside country. Few years ago, this factor would have little consideration. Means before globalizations, there were much restrictions. There were much restrictions for international trade. So every industrialist install their plant in their home country only. But after globalization, after internationalization of business, this factor takes much consideration. This factor having greater importance, and the industrialist should have to identify an area where the plant should be located, and the industrialist should have to make various decisions related to locating the plant internationally or domestically. And they have to consider various factors. They have to consider various factors for identifying a country where the plant should be located, where the plant should be operated. If the management decides the plant should be located at outside of the country, means at foreign country, again they have to make various decisions related to identifying a particular country where the plant should be located, where the plant should be operated. Generally, the industrialists identify a country where they can able to produce the goods at less cost, and they have to identify a country where the raw material is available. Means at that country they can able to get raw material at less cost, at cheap cost, and they have to identify a country where the organization able to get cheap labor, and they have to identify a country where other resources they can able to get easily, and they have to install their plant in a particular country where the customers of that country having higher demand of company's product. So first step in location selection involves identification of a country where the plant should be operated or located. After identifying the country where the plant should be located or operated, the next logical step involved in location selection is selection of region. Country having many natural regions. The industrialists have to identify a particular region out of many natural regions for installing their plant. So, in second step, what the industrialist will do? In second step, the industrialist has to identify a particular region, a particular area out of many natural areas of a country. So, while identifying a particular region for installing a plant, the industrialist must have to consider various factors. If the industrialist consider these factors, and by considering these factors, they can able to identify the good region out of many natural regions of a country. So, what are the factors the industrialist must have to consider while selecting a region out of many natural regions? Let me discuss one by one. First factor he has to consider is that availability of raw material. Means the industrialist should have to identify a place where the raw materials is available. Means they have to identify a place where they get the raw materials easily. If they identify a place where the raw materials is not available, means they have to procure the raw material from outside. So the raw material can be bring to the organization through various medium of transportation. So unnecessarily transportation cost increases. If transportation cost increases, automatically farms production cost increases. To avoid such things, the industrialist should have to identify a place where the raw material is available. If the industrialists identify a location where raw material is available, then they can able to get raw material easily at less cost, and they can able to get raw material continuously, so that the production can be done with a continued manner. Next factor the industrialist must have to consider is that nearness of market. Means the industrialists have to identify a location that is nearer to the market. Means if the plant is near to the market, then the industrialist or farm get various types of benefits. If the plant is near to the market, then the industrialist or the manufacturer can send their goods to the market at less cost, at less time. Means if the plant is near to the market, at less transportation cost, the goods can be reached to the market. And if in case market having high demand of company's product, and in market having deficiencies of company's product, then company or farm immediately able to send their goods to the market, so that they can able to fulfill the demand of the customer, and farm can able to retain, capture more number of customer with them. Next factor the industrialist must has to consider is that availability of power. Power factor also plays a vital role for some industry. Take the example of steel manufacturing and aluminum manufacturing industry. Generally, they are high power intensive. Generally, they consume high power for producing the goods. So, this type of industry must be located near to the power generation site. So, the industrialist should have to identify a place where the power is generated, so that this type of this type of plant can get easily electricity or power from the generation site. Next factor the industrialists have to consider is that transportation facilities. So transportation facility factor also plays a vital role while selecting a particular region. the industrialist should have to identify a particular region which is infrastructurally developed. Means if the industrial plant imports some material from foreign country, the material can bring to the plant through shipment, through voyage. So that type of plant should be located near to the port so that they can able to get their raw material easily. And if the plant brings their material through road communication by bus or by truck, then they have to install their industry. They have to install their plants in a particular area where there is proper system for transportation facility. There is proper system for communication. And if the industry procure their raw material through the railway transportation medium, then the plant should be located near to the railway station so that this helps them to procure their raw material, bring their raw material easily to their plant. Next factor the industrialist must have to consider is that suitability of climate. For some industry, climate factor plays an important role. Take the example of textile manufacturing industry. Textile industry generally require high humid climate. So the industrialist of such type of plant should have to identify a location where the weather is humid. So they have to choose such type of location. They have to consider climatic factor for selecting their location for their plant. Next comes to government policies. Government policies also plays a major role for identifying a location for the plant. Generally, generally the industrialist has to follow the rules, regulations, and policies of the government. Government made certain provision for a particular area, or government made certain provisions for developing a particular area. So government announces that if an industrialist install their plant at particular area, then they can able to get various types of benefits like tax exemptions, subsidy in electricity charges, and they can able to generate capitals. They can able to take loans easily from the bank. So the industrialist should have to identify such type of areas. The industrialist should have to avail such benefits given by the government. So they have to identify such type of areas where that is available. So if they choose such type of area, then the farm's production cost can be decreased and the farm able to produce the goods at less cost. Next factor the industrialist must have to consider is that availability of labor. This is the important factor the industrialist should have to consider while identifying a good location for their plant. They have to identify a location or place where the labor is available. Means they have to choose a place where there is sufficient number of labor. And if the plant get cheap labor, then at that location they have to locate their plant. If the industry located in a particular area where low labor charges is not available, where labor is not available, means they have to procure or they have to import the labor from outside. If the labor is imported from the outside, generally they charges high wages, so that increases our labor cost. If the labor cost increases, automatically farms production cost also increases. So farm have to identify a location where labor is available and where cheap labor is available, the plant has to identify a particular region. So in second step, what the industrialist will do, in second step, the industrialist will able to find out a particular region out of many natural regions of a country. In first step, they have to decide where the plant should be located. Either it is located at a home country or at foreign country. In second step, they can able to identify a particular region out of many natural regions of the country. So in second step, they can able to identify a part of a country where the plant should be located. So after identifying a particular region, the next logical step involving location selection is selection of the community or locality. Means a particular region having number of localities, number of communities. So out of that, the industrialist has to identify a proper local area, identify a ideal local area for their plant. So in third step, What the industrialist will do in third step, they have to find out, or they are able to find out a proper local area or proper community for the proper community in a particular region for installing their plant. So while selecting a locality or community in a particular region, they have to consider certain factors. What are the factors they have to consider while selecting a community? Let me discuss one by one. First one is the availability of labor. Availability of labor is the most important factor the industrialists have to consider while identifying a locality or a community in a particular region. So they have to identify a local area where the labor is available, where cheap labor is available, and where they can able to get labor easily. They have to identify such type of places. If they identify a particular local area where labor is not available, means they have to import labor from outside. So if the labor is imported from outside, generally they charges high wages, so that increases our labor cost. If the labor cost increases, then automatically comes production cost increases. So for avoiding such things, the organization or the industrialist or the entrepreneur should have to identify a particular locality where the labor is available. Generally, local labor charges low wages, and with minimum cost, the farm can able to produce the goods. Next factor the industrialist should have to consider while selecting a community or locality is civic amenities for workers. Means the industrialist should have to identify a place where the civic amenities of workers or employees can be fulfilled. They have to identify a place where basic facilities are available like health facilities and educational facilities, and the place having some uh, basic the places having some amusement facilities for worker like parks, parks, clubs, and cinema halls. This type of location should be selected by the industrialist so that worker can able to fulfill their civic amenities. Worker can fulfill, or employees of the organization plan can able to fulfill their basic requirements, and they're satisfied with that location, and they want to retain with the plant, and they want to work with the plant. Next factor the industrialist must have to consider is that existence of complementary and competing industry. So the industrialist must have to identify an area where the complementary industries are available. Complementary industry means what? Generally, complementary industry produces complementary goods, and complementary goods cannot be sold alone. These goods can be sold with the main product. If the company produces the main product, and that should be located in a place where complementary industries are available. If there are complement, if in a particular place complementary industries are available, then the farm can able to get its part for manufacturing a whole unit of product, a whole unified product, so that the farm should have to identify a place where the complementary industries are available, so that they can able to produce their goods easily. And the industrialist should not have to identify a place where the competing industries are available. Means, they have to identify an area where the complementary industries are available, and the existence of competing industry may appear to be disadvantageous to the plant. Next factor the industrialist must have to consider is that finance and research. Finance is most important factor or most important thing for producing the goods. So the industrialists have to identify a particular area where the loan can be generated or loan can be sanctioned easily, and they can able to generate capital easily. Generally, in developing countries, capital is not equally distributed in all areas. But in developed countries, the capital is distributed equally or uniformly at every areas. So, the developing countries industrialists have to identify a particular area where the finance facility is available, where the industrialists can able to generate the capitals for their plants. Next comes to availability of water. Water factor also plays a vital role for some industry. Means some industrialists consider this factor for for identifying a good location for their plant. Take the example of fertilizer unit, take the example of screen printing, leather industry, cotton manufacturing industry. Generally, they require high amount of water. These industry are these industry consumes high amount of water. So this type of plant should be located near to the coastal area so that they can able to get the requirement of water from rivers and from lakes. So this type of industrialist should have to identify a location where the water facilities is available. Where there is enough water, they have to identify that place, that area for locating their plant. Next factor he has to consider is that local taxes and restriction. Generally, local authority charges different types of taxes. They collect various taxes in the form of water tax, electricity charges, and many taxes. So the industrialists have to identify a local area where such taxes and restrictions are minimum. If the industrialists consider these factors for identifying a locality in a particular region, then he can able to identify a good location for their plant. So in third step, they can able to, or the industrialist can able to identify a particular local area for installing his plant. The next logical step involved in plant location selection is selection of exact site. The fourth step involved in selection of location is selection of exact site. In a particular local area, there are many industrial sites. Out of that, the industrialist should have to select one exact site for installing their plant. So while identifying the exact site for installing their plant, they have to consider various factors. Means they have to consider two factors only, like soil quality and disposal of waste. Soil quality is not important for some industries. Take the example of manufacturing of industrial product industry. So these types of industry generally doesn't require the quality of soil. But some industry like agro-based industry, for them, fertile soil is very important. So this type of industry should have to identify a location where the soil quality is good, where the soil quality is fertile. Means the manufacturing of industrial goods, they should not worry about the soil quality, and they have to choose the industrial site according to their suitability. But some agro-based industry, soil quality plays a vital role. So for that industry, the industrialist must have to identify a local area or the exact site where the soil quality is good or fertile soil. Next, disposal of waste. Next, the industrialist should have to consider the factor that is disposal of waste. The industrialist should have to identify a location, should have to identify an area where there is a proper provision, there is a proper system of disposal of waste. So after considering these things, after considering various factors, the industrialist is able to identify a good location for their plant. So for identifying a good location, they have to follow four steps. First one is they have to decide whether the plant should be located in internationally or domestically. Second, they have to identify a particular region out of many natural regions. Third, they have to identify a particular locality in a particular region. And last, they have to identify the exact site in a particular locality. Now I want to give an example. Take the example of Ultratech cement manufacturing industry. So one of its plants is situated in Karnataka state. So the management of Ultratech Cement first they decide where they have to locate their plant, whether they have to locate their plant internationally or domestically. So they decided that they have to locate their plant in India. After that, they try to find out a particular region for installing their plant. So in second step, they identify a particular state for installing the plant. So they identify in Karnataka state, they have to install their plant. In third step, they identify a particular region if they identify a particular locality in a particular region. So in third step, they decided that they have to identify a particular site to install their plant, and they decided that they have to install their plant in Gulbarga district. And after that, they identify exact site for installing the plant. In Gulbarga district, they identify the exact area that is in Aditya Nagar. They decided to install their plant for manufacturing the cement. So, in location selection, if the industrialists follow various steps, then they can able to identify a good location in a systematic way, and that helps them to bring operating efficiency, and that helps them to reduces the cost of production. So this is all about today's class.